What if Africa industrialized first? Imagine a world where the Industrial Revolution never began in Europe. No smokestacks rising above London, no British Empire dominating the seas, no race among European powers to colonize the world. Instead, the first great factories rise along the Niger River. Steam engines are perfected in Timbuktu, and the most powerful nations on Earth are African kingdoms. How different would our world be? To answer that question, we need to travel back to the 1300s. In our timeline, Africa was already wealthy. The Mali Empire controlled some of the richest gold deposits on Earth. Great Zimbabwe dominated regional trade. The Kingdom of Benin was famous for its engineering and craftsmanship. Ethiopia maintained one of the world's oldest continuous civilizations. The continent possessed vast resources, thriving trade routes, and growing cities. But in this alternate timeline, something crucial changes. Knowledge spreads faster. Instead of regional conflicts disrupting intellectual progress, African rulers begin investing heavily in education. Large universities emerge across the continent. Timbuktu becomes the equivalent of Oxford, Harvard, and MIT combined. Scholars from every kingdom gather to exchange ideas. Mathematics, astronomy, engineering, medicine, agriculture. Knowledge becomes the most valuable resource in Africa. And once knowledge begins generating wealth, everything changes. By the late 1300s, African engineers create advanced water-powered machinery to improve mining operations. Gold extraction becomes dramatically more efficient. Iron production increases. Food production expands. Trade grows faster than ever before. The profits generated by these industries are poured back into research. Inventors become celebrities. Kings compete to fund new technologies. And then, a breakthrough occurs. Around the year 1420, engineers working near Mali's mining centers develop the first practical steam engine. Initially, it is crude, slow, unreliable, but it works. And history only needs one successful machine to change forever. Over the next century, steam technology spreads rapidly. Factories begin appearing throughout West Africa. Textile mills, metal workshops, machine factories, shipyards. Cities that once housed tens of thousands of people now contain hundreds of thousands. By 1500, Timbuktu has become one of the largest cities on Earth. Steam-powered transportation follows soon after. Railroads begin connecting major trade centers. Goods that once took months to move across the continent now arrive within days. Agricultural production explodes. Mining output skyrockets. Population growth accelerates. And Africa enters an economic boom unlike anything humanity has ever seen. Meanwhile, Europe looks very different. In our timeline, Europe industrialized first and used its technological advantage to dominate global trade. But now, Europe finds itself falling behind. Countries like England, France, Spain, and Portugal remain largely agricultural. Their economies are smaller, their militaries are weaker, and their rulers become increasingly concerned about Africa's growing influence. European merchants travel to African ports, hoping to purchase advanced machinery. Young European students travel to African universities seeking education. African banks provide loans to European kingdoms. The balance of power completely reverses. Instead of Africa importing European technology, Europe imports African technology. The phrase, "Made in Africa," becomes the world's most respected label. African corporations dominate international markets. African currencies become the backbone of global finance. European nations spend centuries trying to catch up. But the effects don't stop there. Asia also changes dramatically. China remains one of the largest civilizations on Earth. However, instead of competing with European powers, China finds itself competing directly with African industrial empires. Trade routes across the Indian Ocean become the busiest commercial networks in human history. African and Chinese merchants dominate global commerce. Joint scientific projects emerge between African universities and Chinese scholars. Together, they create innovations decades ahead of schedule. India experiences massive changes as well. African companies invest heavily in Indian manufacturing. Major Indian cities become centers of trade connecting Asia and Africa. Rather than becoming a colony of a European empire, India develops as an independent industrial partner. This creates one of the most powerful economic alliances in history. Africa, India, China, three industrial giants connected by global trade. And then there are the Americas. In our timeline, European explorers crossed the Atlantic and established colonies throughout North and South America. But in this alternate world, African nations possess the most advanced ships. African explorers become the first to regularly cross the Atlantic Ocean. Trade relationships are established with indigenous civilizations centuries earlier. African merchants exchange technology, crops, and ideas with societies throughout the Americas. Over time, settlements emerge. Major coastal cities develop under African influence. Languages spoken throughout the Americas become completely different. Instead of English, Spanish, and Portuguese dominating the continent, African languages become major world languages. History books tell entirely different stories, different heroes, different discoveries, different empires. The cultural landscape of the Americas becomes almost unrecognizable compared to our world. Australia changes as well. In our timeline, Britain eventually established colonies across Australia. But Britain never becomes a global superpower in this alternate history. Instead, African maritime powers dominate the oceans. Trade routes stretch from Africa to Asia and eventually reach Australia. Ports emerge along Australia's coastline. Commercial centers grow around African trading networks. The development of Australia follows an entirely different path. Its culture, economy, and political systems become heavily influenced by African and Asian civilizations. Meanwhile, the Middle East becomes one of the most important regions on Earth. Situated between Africa and Asia, it serves as the central bridge connecting the world's largest economies. Cities like Baghdad, Damascus, Cairo, and Mecca become vital hubs of commerce and innovation. Railroads connect continents. Industrial infrastructure spreads rapidly. The Middle East experiences an economic golden age lasting centuries. By the 1700s, Africa has become the center of the global economy. Its factories produce goods for every continent. Its universities attract students from around the world. Its banks finance governments thousands of miles away. Its inventions drive human progress, and because wealth creates innovation, innovation accelerates even faster. Scientists develop improved steam engines. Electric power arrives earlier. Communication technology advances rapidly. Medical discoveries save millions of lives. The pace of technological progress becomes almost unimaginable. By the equivalent of our 19th century, humanity may already possess technologies that resemble our 20th century. Telephones, automobiles, airplanes, perhaps even primitive computers. The entire timeline of human advancement shifts forward. A world that reached industrialization centuries earlier reaches modern technology centuries earlier as well. But progress always comes with consequences. Factories create pollution. Rapid urbanization creates overcrowded cities. economic inequality grows. Some nations become incredibly wealthy, while others struggle to keep pace. Competition for resources intensifies. Powerful African empires begin competing against one another. Military rivalries emerge. Trade disputes become increasingly dangerous. The same forces that created conflicts in Europe during our timeline now appear elsewhere. Human nature does not change. Only the players do. And eventually, global tensions begin rising. Perhaps the world's major conflicts occur between rival African industrial powers. Perhaps tensions emerge between Africa and Asia. Perhaps global alliances form earlier in an attempt to prevent devastating wars. No one can know for certain. But one thing is clear. The 20th century would look completely different. The world's strongest militaries would likely be African. The world's richest corporations would likely be African. The world's most influential universities would likely be African. The most important stock markets would likely be located in African cities. Children across the globe would grow up learning about African inventors, African explorers, and African leaders. Maps hanging in classrooms would look different. Languages spoken by billions would be different. Cultural traditions shared across continents would be different. Even the foods people eat, the music they listen to, and the stories they tell would be different. The effects would reach every corner of human civilization. And perhaps the most fascinating possibility is space exploration. A civilization that industrialized centuries earlier might reach the stars centuries earlier. African-led space agencies could place satellites into orbit long before our timeline. Moon landings might occur decades sooner. Humanity's journey into the solar system could begin far earlier than anyone imagined. The world of today might already be exploring Mars, or building permanent settlements beyond Earth. All because one continent industrialized first. So what would happen if Africa industrialized first? The richest cities on Earth might be African. Global trade might revolve around African economies. The age of exploration might have unfolded in the opposite direction. Europe might spend centuries trying to catch up. The Americas might speak entirely different languages. Asia might develop through partnerships instead of colonization. And the modern world as we know it might never exist. But perhaps the biggest lesson is this: history is not inevitable. The world we live in today was shaped by countless decisions, opportunities, inventions, and accidents. Change just a few of them, and an entirely different civilization could have stood at the center of the world. A civilization that, in another timeline, industrialized first.